Alright, so we're checking out the new NewBeeDrone SavageBee HD O3. So they sent me the kit version, which is one that does not include the O3 air unit, so you have to install it yourself. I'll talk about the installation process here shortly. But you can also buy it as a bind and fly with the O3 air unit pre-installed. And this is the box came in, and where it says O3 kit. This one does come with Express LRS and has the dual antenna system. We have the T antenna here in the front. It kind of goes into the frame right there, and then you have a secondary antenna here in the back. For those of you that aren't familiar with the SavageBee, they did a video on that one a while back. It was originally like a toothpick style quad 3 inches. This is 2.5 inch props. I think these use these are the new Gemfan 25 12 3-bladed props. That's what here right here. But basically, I think it's the same frame, but because of the O3 air unit being installed here on top, it is using 2.5 inch props instead of 3 inch props. But you have the same motors as well. So these are these 1202 11,420 kV motors, and these are the same ones that were on the original SavageBee that flew 1S or 2S. Obviously, this is a totally different setup here. It's using a different flight controller board, and we're on a 2S setup only because the O3 air unit does not run on 1S. And the new board in here is actually the same one that's in the Acrobee 7503. Now, the one I reviewed came with a previous version of this board, so I think they're calling this the BeeBrain HD G4, and I believe this board is essentially the same as the previous one that I reviewed in the Acrobee 7503, but that one came with an F7 MCU. This one comes with a G4 MCU. Now, I don't know 100% what the differences are between the two different MCUs. I believe there's a cost difference, of course, and maybe slightly different characteristics in terms of processing. I don't think it's all that different. If you feel like I'm mistaken on that, let me know in the comments below as to what the significant differences are between an F7 and a G4. But other than that, I believe it's essentially the same board that I reviewed in the Acrobee 7503 with Express LRS on board. It is a serial Express LRS. It does come with a 12 amp 4-in ESC, and they do come with BlueJay firmware 19.2 at 48 kilohertz. So basically what this is kind of a mix of the original SavageBee with the frame and the motors, propping down to 2.5 inches, and we have the updated flight controller board from the Acrobee 7503, and then they're using kind of a similar setup for the mounting for the O3 camera. Of course, it's the camera is sticking out a little bit more forward and a little more prominently out to get the props out of view. And so essentially, if you are looking for something like the Acrobee 7503, but you were not happy with the whoop characteristics, basically with prop guards, you have a lot of mass on the outer edges of the props, which kind of makes it a little bit sluggish in handling. And this is going to handle more like a regular quad. Now, of course, it is still limited to 2S, and so this is technically not really great for freestyle. It's a good cruiser. The PID tune could be improved. So I did do a few flights. I tried to do some freestyle with this one. It is very power limited, being 2S and at this weight. I'll show you the weight here momentarily. So when if you're flying it in wind, which I was, it was fairly windy, not super windy, but a good 10 miles an hour breeze. Maybe going to 15. It would look like on this day some storm clouds are coming in, and it was going to rain pretty soon. But it is highly affected by wind because it's so light, and the PID tune doesn't seem to account for wind as much, so it does shake a lot when the wind kind of hits it. And when you try and do certain kinds of maneuvers like split S's, power loops, wherever you're going to go into your own prop wash, the prop wash handling on this PID tune isn't very good. You get a lot of shaking, wobbles, oscillations. I'm not sure how to fix it. The pit tunes on here is not using any of the sliders, so it is a custom tune. I think that they tune this in calm conditions. So in calm conditions when there's no wind, hitting it, it seems to be okay. It doesn't shake too much. If you're just flying kind of cinematically and in straight lines, it seems okay. But of course, here's another flight here where it's a less windy day, and I'm just kind of flying around the park, kind of low to the ground, trying to stay out of the wind, and you can still see a little bit of shaking. So the pit tune definitely needs improvement. I would recommend that NewBeeDrone fly this in some wind with an updated pit tune before sending that out. But again, overall, if you're looking for something kind of not too noisy, park flyer, not going to attract a lot of attention, this is definitely one of those things. I think it's going to be fine for flying in most places where there's people. They're not going to really be bothered too much by it because it's not very noisy at all, and it flies more like a regular quad. Obviously, it's kind of like a toothpick. So basically, it's like an HD O3 toothpick. Basically, is what this is on 2.5-inch props. But I think that if your goal is something for more freestyle, I would not recommend this necessarily. Sure, you can do some flippy floppies. It might fly better with an updated pit tune. We'll have to see. If I get an updated pit tune, I may make another video on this one a little bit later to see if it's improved or not for freestyle flying. But of course, this the way the camera's mounted is obviously not ideal for, I guess, bando flying, aggressive freestyle where you're going to be doing a lot of crashing. This is like that same kind of 3D printed type of mount for the O3 air unit, and the camera that the Acroby 7503 had, of course, is slightly different. Now for that one, you're mostly only flying indoors, slow, cinematic. You're less worried about the camera getting damaged in a crash for that one, and it's not sticking out as prominently. This one is very prominently sticking out, so I would definitely recommend, getting some sort of a, camera protection here. So this one here is the Camera Butter UV filter. You can stick that on. That will, give you a little bit of extra protection for the lens because you don't want to damage that. So you can break these for like $10. Obviously cheaper to break this on the camera. But of course, you still can, in a crash, damage the camera mount itself. So for those of you that are concerned about that, they do have 2 extra spares in the box, including, so you get 3 basically total. And here's what it looks like up close. It's that kind of like, I'm not sure if it's 3D printed or it's some sort of like a resin or something. I'm not 100% sure how these are manufactured, but yeah, it's obviously not super strong. So in any kind of crash, really, unless it's a really super light crash in grass, you're probably going to break the camera mount part up here, and that's why they include spares. So this is not recommended for the type of flying where you're going to be crashing on a consistent basis, because if you crash and you break this, you're gonna have to swap it out, of course. And the idea of spares, that's nice, but getting this in here is kind of tricky. Getting to the O3 air unit into the mount. First off, you do have to put it in upside down like this. So you see the USB port here is on top. This is actually the bottom, and this is how, at least I tried doing like the right side up and I couldn't get it in. And I looked at one of their photos that came out on the Instagram post showing that it should be like this. And that's because the camera cable is coming out right here. And if you flip it over, it's going to be down in this area here. And in this part right here, the camera cable is going to get, basically damaged if you try and put it in that way. So don't do that. It is a very tight fit. You have screws available to you if you want to screw that into the top. So there's some screw holes here, right there, and then that's for these screws. These are some M1.6 screws, and they should go here. So I actually did not use them because it just holds it in no problem. It's very hard to get in anyway. But you can optionally put those screws in there. You have to take the screws out of the O3 earrings, the black ones, and then put the silver ones in to mount it to this cage, but I didn't feel it was necessary, so I didn't use those. And then they included these short M2 screws for the camera mounting, but they were too short. So I used my own screws, and actually when I tried using theirs, because they were so short and barely caught any of the thread from the camera holes in the camera, I actually stripped out one of the holes. And so if you get those short ones, just use some longer ones. Hopefully they'll replace those later in a later batch in production. But also, I did not use this little plate here for the antenna, like the antenna holder. And you can see right here it's exposed, because when you try and mount this in here, I cannot get the O3 earring in here with the plate on with the antennas. I couldn't figure it out. So maybe they'll have a video or something, some instructions later, but I couldn't figure it out. But in terms of soldering, I think nothing like that's required. This plug is already soldered onto the board, and you just kind of route it through here and then plug it into the back. And of course, when you do install the camera and O3 earring unit, you have to disconnect the camera cable right here on the O3 earring unit. I would recommend doing it right there on the base of the O3 earring unit, because you cannot get the camera through this route right here. So if you try, you put O3 earring unit goes in here, you try to route the camera through this way. I was not able to get it through here, so I had to disconnect the camera from the O3 earring unit and then route the cable back through this way, and then connect it to the O3 unit, mount the O3 earring unit, and then wrap the cable in there. It's kind of wrap it around inside there, and then go ahead and mount the camera. And then the whole cage will mount via these 4 screws right here. There's 4 long M2 screws. They go here on the 4 corners where the flight controller goes through. And you can see it's on top of these rubber grommets. So there's a little bit of play in here. And so you can see it kind of goes up and down. That's to give it a little bit of vibration dampening. Now, ideally, what they should probably do is have another rubber grommet that goes through the inside of this plastic part here, so that this metal screw head isn't touching the plastic here. So this metal screw head is actually screwing into the carbon plate here, so it's where all the vibrations are. So some vibrations are going to get through to the plastic mounting here through that screw head. So ideally they should have another rubber grommet that goes all the way basically through a larger hole inside this plastic cage, and then that will have we'll have some rubber dampening on the underside and on the top side, so that the screw is completely isolated from the plastic cage. So I'm going to let them know that they should probably consider that for design modification. Now, I didn't get any Jello, but I didn't really fly this on a super sunny day because it's been kind of overcast and cloudy lately. But I suppose on a super sunny day, depending upon vibrations and kind of that, things that might come through, you may see some Jello. I wasn't using an ND filter, of course, so you may be able to mitigate that with an ND filter. That could possibly help. But yeah, it's not 100% isolated. So, like as I mentioned, another rubber grommet that goes through this plastic part here that isolates that screw head could definitely make sure that there's no Jello whatsoever. But you do have to kind of be careful on how you mount this screw here, so that you don't want it to not screw down too tight, but you don't want it too loose either. So I have kind of a little bit of play here, but you don't want to have too much play, because if it's moving around too much, then that shaking in itself will cause Jello. So some things to be aware of there. And then regarding the battery mount here, so this is the battery that I use. This is a 2S 550 milliamp hour from Beta FPVs, the new Lava LiPo. Pretty good battery. I get roughly 4.5 minutes of a mix of fairly aggressive and cruising around flying. If you're just kind of cruising around, you might be able to get up to maybe 5 minutes at most on this battery here. This tray is 3D printed, is on the bottom here, and you can see it fits this battery pretty nicely. I think they recommend either a 450 2S or a 550 2S tattoo battery. I think these batteries are similar in dimension, and then they just kind of slide in and out here. It's not that difficult to get in. And then this part just kind of sits flat like this, So you can see how like this, this part here will be against the frame, and then you just slide the battery in like this. So one thing to be aware of, it's not too hard to get the batteries in and out of here. So you just kind of pull this up like this, and then they'll just slide in. But the thing to be aware of is that because of this tray, see how it's like kind of like this, where you can kind of grab it. It does not, when you try and take off, it'll just fall to one side or the other, like that. So for those of you beginner flyers, you're gonna be like on the side like this, and you're gonna have to, before you take, if you just hit the throttle, it'll basically just go off to the side and it'll flip over. Trust me, I've seen people do that. So what you're gonna wanna do is, when you first arm, you're gonna wanna right it so it's level, and then throttle up to take off. For those of you first time flyers, you might have difficulty with that. So maybe some other tray or battery solution might be in order for people that have difficulty with that. But I just want to, make that aware, bring that awareness to you in case you're wondering, why it's difficult to take off. All right, so here's the weight of just the quad by itself. It's 82 grams. And then the weight of the battery that I used is 29.6, about 30 grams. So all up flying weight is 111 grams. So for this here, if you're like, oh, it needs to be under 100 grams, well, obviously this is going to work for you because this is a bit bigger and a bit heavier than the SavageBee 75 O3, which is under 100 grams. And for those of you that are really flying in a place where it's the 100 gram limit is a strict thing. I think Japan might be one place, and this one is a no-go. You're gonna have to find a way to shave off 10 grams, and maybe you want to strip down your O3 air unit and make it naked. So in that case, you probably want to pick up this thing here. This is the naked DJI O3 conversion kit from NewBeeDrone. This looks really similar to the one from Flywoo. So just go ahead and pull all the parts here. You get your antennas, all of your screws. Of course, you're gonna need that, and you got the little parts here for creating your naked O3 air unit. And there's the camera cage. So let's see how this looks. And here's the camera mount. Looks pretty much identical to the Flywoo. Very, very similar. CNC aluminum. You got your different parts here for mounting the air unit itself once it's stripped down. I suspect it's almost identical, not 100%, but pretty similar. So if you're, if you need to get this thing under 100 grams, I believe if you strip this down and use this conversion kit, you're probably going to get that to under 100 grams, and you maybe go down to the 450 size 2S battery instead of the 550, and then you can get that under 100 grams. For those of you guys are absolutely needing to be under 100 grams. Anyway, that's going to cover for this video. I am kind of glad they made something like this. Obviously there's a lot of people that are like, hey, it's really fragile and you're going to break it. Not everyone crashes a lot. I certainly don't. I'm not one to totally I need to have a quad that I'm going to be pushing all the time. There's a lot of people who just want to fly casually, cruise around and enjoy their flight and get some nice footage from the O3 air unit. If you don't know what an O3 air unit is and what kind of footage you can get, there's lots of other videos out there that can explain that if you're, don't know what that is. But yeah, for something like this of this size, if you don't necessarily like the way whoops fly and you just want to kind of cruise around, not so concerned about crashing, this will be fine. Not everything needs to be a tank. I think that sure, there's plenty of tank options out there, and for those of you that want a tank, you can do that. You can go that route, and and more power to you. But I would like manufacturers to make more things like this for people that are more concerned about flight time, more concerned about not necessarily having everything being super heavy and have a lot of weight, a lot of damage protection, because you're carrying around a lot of weight where you don't need to if you're not going to be crashing a lot. So I applaud NewBeeDrone for making this. Of course, I'm sure they're going to get criticized from all the tank people, but that's just kind of like the FPV community is these days. They want everything to be I guess, impossible to destroy or indestructible. And I disagree with that. I don't think that's correct. There should be options, of course, for people that don't need that and don't care about that. And I would be one of those, and I'm happy that they're making these kind of things. So thanks to NewBeeDrone for sending this out for review. I'll probably be keeping this around, and, you'll see it from time to time. Hopefully they'll make a new pid tune for this one that I'll feel is an improvement. We'll see. And if you are interested in a video on that one, let me know. Hopefully they'll fix that, and I'll get a new video on this one a little bit later. That'll do it for this one. I will talk to you guys in the next video.